Welcome to the Money to Meaning podcast, where we explore ways to bridge the gap between money and our heart's desires. I'm your hostess, Amy Adler, and I'm really excited for my guest today, Tianna Roser. I'm going to let her talk a little bit more about her business and what she does, but I just want to share that I'm always super excited, especially excited to be talking with people who come from spiritual businesses, what we like to lovingly call the woo-woo world, because it's such a new environment for me to be in, and yet it's so incredibly fascinating and rewarding and powerful and important. And so I love that we're having this conversation today on this podcast in particular, because I imagine a lot of the people who are listening to my podcast or watching are on this because they're going through or considering going through a divorce, or they're looking for information about spirituality of money. And so those two topics are very relevant for us. So thank you so much for being here, Tianna.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm a practitioner of spirituality and wellness, really, and my focus is helping to empower people. And usually that means through connecting to your own higher self, through your own soul. You have all of your inner resources. I'm certified in a number of sort of transformational practices, such as Reiki, chakra balancing, hypnotherapy. I specialize in spiritual hypnotherapy, such as past life regression, life between lives regression, quantum healing hypnosis technique, and I also do soul plan reading. And I teach a number of classes and workshops along those lines as well. I just love helping people to become, their highest potential and to be happy and fulfilled in their lives.
And you're really good at it. I can speak to that because I think we first met when I took your Reiki level 1 class, as I was learning or I got my first attunement there. And then we also did kind of a little practice past life regression event that was meant for social media purposes, I think. So I got to experience both with Tianna, and they were both incredibly interesting and powerful, really meaningful experiences. So I love that you're doing this and that you're offering this. So, how did you come to the decision to start a spiritual business? Has this always been your thing, or did you start somewhere else?
Not at all. I got my degree in business and I really didn't have a strong passion when I was younger, the way that some people do. And so business just made sense, right? You're always gonna need business people. And it was a logical choice that made me choose business. And it was a logical choice that made me choose marketing because I'm actually not good with numbers, unlike you. So it's like, okay, let's do marketing. And I thought I wanted to just, be this successful businesswoman. And then I got into that world, right out of college. And it was just it felt so off for me. It wasn't me. And I guess I started to realize that I didn't know who I was. I was just sort of following along, right? We get all of this messaging about what we should be doing from society and what's smart to do. And I don't think we get enough messaging or guidance or support for kind of figuring out who we are before we choose, like, oh, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. So anyway, I got into that and just was like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine myself doing this in 5 years, in 10 years. Who am I going to be? What is my life going to be like? And so that got me to sort of start meditating and trying to go within myself to understand, who am I and what do I want? And that sort of sparked this huge spiritual awakening once meditation clicked, which it didn't right away, but once it started to kind of gel, and then I always wanted to meditate. And after I'd get off of work, I would meditate for like 3 or 4 hours at a time. And so this like sparked this big spiritual awakening. And I was feeling energy. And so that was one of the first things that was trying to understand what I was feeling energetically. That led me to a Reiki practitioner, a Reiki master. And that's sort of how I started initially, is through Reiki, um, just like, wow, this energy is amazing. I want this all the time. And so through meditation and through Reiki, I just no longer sort of aligned with who I thought I was. And it felt just so uncomfortable to stay in that corporate environment. And so I quit my job. I'm from Hawaii, left Hawaii and moved as far across the US as I could just to sort of get away so that I could have space to explore who am I more deeply and what do I want. And it wasn't just like a boom, went from there and then started my spiritual practice at all. Because at that point in time, I didn't think that like a person could actually do this full time and support themselves. And also, I didn't think that like, I guess I wasn't ready. So I had some more life experiences still to do before. So I worked at a cafe, then I became the cafe manager, and then a relationship ended. And then I moved from Boston to Seattle. And when I was in Seattle, there was this yoga studio that I started to go to, and then I started to work there, and then I was like managing this yoga centers, and there were things that once I got into that organization, that didn't align with me. That felt the more I kind of saw who the organization was, it was just didn't feel good to me, and I realized like, oh, I'm running this center. I'm teaching these classes. I'm doing healing sessions. I can do this on my own in a way that is aligned with my values and who I really am. And it was from there that I went and got hypnotherapy training and began my practice.
I love that. And so you went really slowly, almost the same way that I did too. I feel like a lot of us have been on a similar trajectory from the like corporate world, or at least being employed by someone else, to finding out what your real purpose is and what your expertise is, what you're really here to do and offer the world, to doing it yourself and having this, now you're completely self-sovereign in your business because you own it and you're in charge. So that's actually a great segue into my next question. Of course, I've already given you part of the answer, but tell me what else you love about being self-employed besides just having the ability to make your own decisions.
How much time do we have?
Just the highlights.
Gosh, it's the best thing in the world. It is, so like you said, the sovereignty, what I had kind of was saying, about the alignment is really important to me. As I opened up spiritually and connected to my higher self, I want all parts of my life to be in alignment with my true self. And I love that the conversations that I have throughout the day, the Tianna that comes to work is the same Tianna, the kind of conversations I have with my friends and my family. It's not like have to be this one person here at work and then I have to be this other. I mean, there's a little bit, of course, like I'm the practitioner and I'm guiding people, but authentically who I am is the same person. And that's really important to me, is that everything that it's an alignment with my true self, and that I don't have to pretend or something. So that's huge for me. And freedom is huge for me. And I think it's really important kind of that you ask this question too, because I don't think self-employment is for everyone.
Yeah.
I think it's for a lot of us, though. I think it's for more people than they realize. But I think like the key, which I like about just even the name of your podcast, Money to Meaning, is that we each need to know what are our core values for this life. And because I guide people into past lives, I've seen that we don't always have the same, I call it lesson plan for each life, right? So one life might be about safety and security and building something and very stable. Another life might be more about freedom and adventure and so forth. And so for me, freedom and sovereignty are very important. And so I want the flexibility that over the years that I've had my practice, and I've had my practice here in Austin since 2008. So it's been 17 years now. I do things differently. I've had, right now I have Thursday, Fridays are my days off. And there was a point when I had chose weekends to be, and there was a point when I had split days. And I can just change that whenever I want. There was a point when, when I first started that I thought I had to have 9 to 5 hours. And then I realized like, no, I don't like starting work at 9. I'm not starting before 10, and I won't start before 10 for anything. Like, because I like my luxurious, like spiritual morning of waking up and writing my dreams down and journaling and meditating and so on and so forth. So those are some of the core things, is that my life is in alignment and it has flexibility and freedom, and that I'm fulfilling my soul's purpose, which I feel is to help awaken consciousness.
Gosh, you've touched on so many amazing topics here. I feel like I could go in so many directions with my follow up questions. But before we do that, I feel like it might be helpful to explain a little bit to folks about some of the terms that you've used that may be a little foreign to them, like higher self, for example, past lives, for another example. Can you just explain a little about what those mean?
Sure. I use the term higher self to be interchangeable with soul, or, some people have a different definition, spirit. What I mean is your individualized self beyond this body, beyond this lifetime. I hate to sound morbid, but we all know that we're going to die. This body is going to die. No one escapes that. And yet, I believe that we have an eternal self beyond this body. And that's what I mean by the higher self, is that we have a aspect of ourself that is in a higher frequency, that has expanded awareness, that has unconditional love, and has wisdom from, and this just goes into, past lives, across lifetimes. So my belief is that we reincarnate. This isn't our only lifetime, that each lifetime we kind of come in to learn and grow and experience through the lifetime. So we come in with a little bit of a lesson plan or a blueprint of what we hope to experience. It's not rigid though. And a lot of times, as the personality might make different choices than our higher self did. But the more that we become aware of our higher self in our life, and we become aligned with our higher self, then the more fulfilling our life tends to be. It doesn't necessarily make it easier. Sometimes it does, but a lot of times, but it does bring us deep fulfillment to be in alignment with it.
That makes perfect sense. And so the whole concept of past lives is fascinating to me, and also kind of confusing from another perspective, because what I also hear in the spiritual community is that there is really no such thing as time, that everything is happening all at once, in energetically speaking, and yet on earth we have this chronological lifespan and lifetimes that happens in years, not months, days, hours, minutes, seconds. And so, can you help us understand a little bit about what the past life literally means in the grander scheme?
Yeah, I think it's just a old term that is the most well known, and so we stick with it. But we could call it, instead of past life regression, we could call it other life regression, because, and it's funny because my left brain does get kind of tied up in knots when I start to think about all. I totally do agree and believe that all time is now, and that while we're here in the physical, we are experiencing things in a linear way, past, present, future. But when we are beyond this third dimensional reality, we see everything as a whole, as a like a circle, and all of these different times are all part of the oneness. It's just kind of helps our little left brains to think in this linear way, but absolutely, your past, your other lifetime could be in what we would consider the future of this linear timeline, or your next life after this one could be in the 1500s, or if we're looking at that way. So it's interesting to sort of be able to kind of hold space for both, to have awareness of our higher self, and to see that all time is now, and from a quantum, and also be in this physical body and be experiencing in a linear way.
That concept made me have a whole new appreciation for the Marvel and DC comics. Like I started watching those movies with a completely different perspective, like thinking, "Oh my goodness, this is real. This is actually to an extent it's real."
Yeah, I think a lot of, entertainment, or Star Trek or Star Wars is a way to kind of sort of gently introduce these concepts to us, where we feel more comfortable with it.
Right? Because we viewed them as being fantasy and just fun for so long. And that now it's starting to come to reality. Like we're seeing that this is not as weird and creative as we initially thought, that it's actually really happening. And then you throw in the concept of parallel lives too, which is that like this version of ourselves is in existence in, an infinite number of other Earths living similar lives, but having different experiences based on other choices or other things that we might have
It
had other happen to us. Yeah.
it gets really mind-boggling to think like, oh, of every major choice, oh, if I hadn't gone to that university, or if I went on that trip that I never went on, or all of these, if I still was with that boyfriend, or all of the possibilities. Yeah, it's infinite, infinite, infinite. And we want to try to stay focused in this life because there's a lot to focus on right here and now as well.
Yeah. But any of it is subject to coming up in the past life regression sessions that you do with people, right? Like it could be a
Mhm.
parallel, it could be a past, could be a future, could be anything, right?
Yeah, and I think, because then also one of the issues that people kind of get hung up on is like, how do I know if it's real? And it's like, what is real, right? Like, or maybe all of these things, because if you have ever had any other kind of sort of spiritual exploration, and for some people that might be plant medicine, or it might be through different meditative practices and so forth, or just dream work, lucid dreams, astral travel, you can have all of these really incredible, powerful experiences that change who you are and how you perceive yourself in the world. And so, like, is it important to focus on trying to prove if something's real, or can we just utilize the experience for our healing, for our self-awareness, for our growth?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And yet also feels so huge.
Yeah, it really is. And so for me, it's always about, when people come and want to have a past life regression, I still always want to tie it back to like, what can we take from this and apply to your life now? So it's not just like, oh, cool experience, which I mean, it in some ways it helps us to like see, the whole forest and trees thing. You want to be able to have the big, broad, cosmic awareness, and you still need to pay your bills and take care of your family and so forth. So
Yeah, I mean, yes, what you're bringing up is so valuable and helpful. It brings to mind a memory that I have from one of the past life regressions that I did with another coach, fairly recently, relatively recently in life, and the regression session resulted in me saying that I was and seeing that I was a queen in this past life, and that I trusted the wrong person and my entire queendom was obliterated. And yeah, I was really blown away. And again, asked some of the same questions that you were talking about, like, is this real? Like, was I really a queen in a past life? Like, how is that possible? That doesn't resonate with me, who I am in this lifetime right now at all. And yet there was some really powerful learning from that experience, that I realized just how much guilt I carry around, even in this lifetime, around letting people down, or the wrong decision, or even trusting someone that I shouldn't trust. So there was a lot there to unpack that was really valuable in just a few minutes. It's like therapy on steroids. You get in like 10 years of therapy in 30 minutes. It's incredible.
I would just like to say I could see you as a queen. I feel like you have a very like regal presence around you.
Thank
But yeah,
you.
I think what's really cool about like seeing other lives is that we realize that this, because we through in this lifetime, we're just seeing through this one, I'm seeing through my Tianna lens all of this lifetime, and to see different versions of ourselves, it allows us to realize, like, I mean, on one hand, kind of like not to take this so seriously, and yet also to take it seriously, right? This is my only Tianna life. I'm never going to be Tianna again, and I've never been Tianna before. And also, I've been all of these other things, right? And so, like, also, if somebody doesn't like this lifetime, their current life, which a lot of people come and they're like, what did I do wrong in this other lifetime that I'm being punished? And I don't agree or believe in that at all. I think that we might choose different challenges. And certainly sometimes we are trying to learn the other side of the lesson. We might have been the perpetrator and now we're on the other side. But a lot of times too, our challenges are just because we came in and we wanted to really push ourselves to grow more. But, bringing it back to like money, is that in this lifetime, if somebody's struggling with money and then they go into a past life when, actually, I'm thinking of this one woman, she went into a past life which everyone would think this sounds like amazing past life. She lived in a palace life, and her family had a lot of money, and she'd always been raised in this palace, but it was like those golden handcuffs, basically, because she's not allowed to go outside of the palace because it's not safe. And she was just bored to tears, and she felt like everyone around her was fake, and that people only wanted to be friends with her because of her family's money. And so she never could feel like, how do I know if people really care about me? It doesn't seem like they do. They just care about my money. And then her soul was bringing her. Usually we just explore one past life in the past life regression, because it's not even, a couple of hours is not a lot of time to explore a whole lifetime if you try to think about your life and whittle it down to 2 hours. But sometimes the soul will bring you into other past lives or other lifetimes to show sort of a contrast. And in that one, the soul had also taken her into another lifetime where she was basically like living off the street, and died young. And it was very survival based, very adventurous. It was very free, but also, not the best life. And so either way, right? Like, we have all these different lives, and it's not like one is the best or one is the worst, but and it's not like, oh, then we all need money, or it's not like, oh, nobody needs money, right? She was like learning in this lifetime how to kind of find a sense of security like she had in the other life, but also value adventure, and how can she find certain balance between the two. So it's really interesting. The more that we can see across lifetimes, we've had a whole range of experiences, and it kind of might help us value and appreciate what we have now.
I love that. And did that client happen to give you any follow-up? Like, was there any specific result that improved after that experience?
I don't know.
Okay.
I need to I don't really follow up after. I really should, because it would be really interesting to hear how things have gone. But like a lot of times that can be a life, like a whole lifetime of study, right? Where, if had seen both of those lives, and I recognize in this lifetime I'm trying to create balance, there might be periods in this lifetime where I'm feeling, pretty safe, and then I realize that I'm not valuing adventure enough. And then there might be times when, I mean, I can look at this lifetime and see where, certain things that I'm learning, I'll kind of swing the pendulum, and then I'll like overly focus on, like, as far as like my left brain and my right brain. There have been periods of my time where I've been really focused in my left brain, and I'm just doing, 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 and making it happen and getting it done. And then there's times when I was like, oh my gosh, I just need to relax and be and enjoy and explore and create. And then ultimately it's kind of a whole life lesson to find that balance, but just to have the awareness and not to get stuck in old patterns is a lot of times a big piece of the puzzle, is like not to just be kind of subconsciously driven by fear of money, that it's going to take away your sense of adventure, and then fear of adventure that you're not going to have safety, and just to see that and then live more mindfully is a
Mhm.
powerful healing in
Oh,
itself.
huge, huge, unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, it's what did the psychology experts say that the like 80% of the way to healing is the awareness of it or so. I mean, don't quote me on the percentage, but I know it's a huge number.
Mm.
That's the key to the healing is just bringing it from the subconscious, unconscious, superconscious, whatever, to the conscious so that we're aware of the patterns and the reason behind it. So I love that. Do you ever experience when you're doing Reiki healing for people, do you ever get like messages or information about people that you're working on healing that have anything to do with money?
Actually, no, the way that I was trained with Reiki, and I teach Reiki in the same way that I was trained, is that we don't tune in to
Mm-hmm.
people's stuff, just to be a pure conduit and let Reiki do all of the work. And different people practice differently, but that was the way that's the lineage, the way I was trained that I teach. And what I like about it is it's very clean. I like to say it's clean energetically because one, I'm not going to project any of my stuff on because when I give Reiki, I'm receiving Reiki. So what I'm experiencing during the Reiki session could be my own stuff coming in. That's where I've heard sometimes kind of like not good stories from people that sometimes went to a practitioner that was like sort of projecting their own stuff on the person and saying, "Oh, you have this, and I noticed this about you," and the person's like, "No, that doesn't resonate with me." But that's not to say that there aren't other people that are really good with that. But yeah, also I don't pick up the person's stuff either because I'm not actually like kind of, inserting myself into their energy field. And so I don't get that from Reiki sessions.
Okay, that's good. That makes it easier too, because you're also then not absorbing the intensity of whatever it is that they're needing to have healed at the same time.
Yeah, it's amazing. I just feel peace and joy and love. And then the person might burst into tears because whatever, the Reiki's like kind of pushing up their stuff. But yeah, absolutely. Energy healing, Reiki can bring up people's stuff. And people will sometimes, you know, during the session have awareness of their patterns. They might have memories come up. It might unlock some subconscious stuff for them, and it could be, connected to that type of thing for sure. Because, when we're talking about energy healing, everything is connected. So our spiritual body, our mental body, our emotional body, and our physical body. And that means that what's showing up in our mundane lives, which could be, I mean, I absolutely see a very strong connection. I mean, I know for myself personally that if I get into a worried or fearful state, that clients don't come, everything shriveled. So it's very connected. And I remember when I first started, when I first moved to Austin. So I had went to hypnotherapy school in California, and then my boyfriend at that time, his job brought us to Austin. And when I'd started my business in California, everything flourished. I already had kind of a network of people that I knew, and it was really quick and easy just to get it up and running. Moved to Austin, didn't know anyone. This was in 2008. There was a little bit of a recession at that time. And it was really hard. I didn't really know what I was doing. And I felt really bad that my boyfriend was sort of supporting me at the time, and I didn't feel comfortable being supported by somebody else as an adult. And that just snowballed. And that was when I was like, oh, I got to do more marketing. And so I'm like pushing, 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 trying to make it happen by doing more actions when really what needed to happen was my energy needed to shift. And so I can remember this, one day of just like, I was doing all these things and it wasn't shifting. More people weren't coming, even though I was doing more. And I just was like, screw it. I'm going to go to the lake and float around and just turn off my phone, leave it in the car, and just relax because I'm feeling, stressed and worried. And then after a few hours out in the water with a friend, come back, check my phone, and there's all these messages of people wanting to book sessions. This is before I had
Oh, that's
online
instant.
booking. Yes. And I realized because I felt so good floating on the lake. I felt so like supported by nature and it's going to be okay and calm. And it was just such a good example of how when we make a shift in our energy, when we make a shift in our mindset, when we make a shift in our emotions, then outward can, mirror that back. And so I'm very mindful of that. And that's like another, I guess you could say, benefit of being self-employed, especially like as a solopreneur. Like if you're a one-person business, you can't blame anything on anyone else. It's like, on one hand, it's like, oh, it's a lot of responsibility to be the boss. On the other hand, if things are going well, you're doing something right. If things are not going well, you need to look at yourself and what you're doing and make some shifts. And so, in a way, like, I really believe our whole life is a mirror of our energy and our lessons and what we're working through and learning. But like, my business is like a little fishbowl where, yeah, it can be really a reflection of where I am stuck or where I am needing to expand or push through.
Yeah, that's so true. So if you fast forward to today, do you ever get concerned about whether you'll have enough sessions in a week or in a month to make ends meet?
Sure, there's always going to be, some of that, or I shouldn't say why am I limiting myself?
There you go.
It's it's
Good catch.
it's 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 common that that kind of thing will happen. I mean, certainly the times that I think we're in really transformational times, and there is going to be a lot of unraveling of the old systems and new systems coming in. And during that time, the economy, people get, scared or freaked out or whatever. And then there can be some of that fluctuation. And there's the mundane things that I've done to kind of help that, of course, is like save for a rainy day so that you can, mitigate those times when things might not be as abundant. But really, as a spiritually oriented being, I always go back to focusing that way. And if things suddenly are not very, if there's not a lot of business coming in or something like that, then I really want to connect more spiritually. Spirit is my, they call it source for a reason, right? Some people call it source, that, trusting and knowing that everything comes from source. And so the more that I can connect to, when I talked about higher self, that's the part of me that knows that I'm always okay, that knows that I've died, who knows, hundreds of times, and I'm still okay. And so, all of this, like the money fear is so much about survival. It's a survival fear. And so I need to connect with the part of me that knows that I'm, always going to survive beyond this physical body, beyond my physical body needs. And so it's really kind of being mindful, connecting to this high frequency energy, catching, like I said, catching, what's that inner dialogue, and doing practices that can help keep me in a space where I feel supported and loved by the universe and so forth. So
I love that explanation, that answer. It brought to mind like the experience that I've had in each stage of my spiritual awakening. The more that I've woken up to realize like that there's so much more than just this life, the less I cared about some of the things that are so like inconsequential in the grand scheme of a higher self or of a soul, of a life, of a soul's lifetimes, that like I got so much less attached to physical things like belongings. I'm about to move out of my house. I'm about to sell because I'm going to be an empty nester very soon, within the next few weeks. And in my kids are talking to me about, well, let's get started packing up now because we're never, it's going to take us forever to get all this stuff moved over. And I said, I'm going to sell it all because I don't have any attachment to any of these things anymore. It's just, they can be loved by another family that has children, and they don't, I don't need to keep them for sentimental reasons, kind of thing. same thing, even with nicer things like my nice jewelry and things like I just don't feel attached to those things anymore, which is such a freeing feeling because they're so expensive financially, right? So like
Mhm.
when I allow myself to realize and focus on the things that really matter to me and to my own human and spiritual growth, the money seems to be so much easier to manage, both from the outflow and the inflow perspective. It just is so much less stressful.
That's beautiful that you're able to have that awareness and choose that. Like I got that awareness through going through what's called a dark night of the soul, where basically like everything in my life fell apart. And then during that time, I it was really like I didn't know from day to day, like my just like my whole business like just shriveled up to like a quarter of what it normally is, and nothing I could do made it better. So normally it's like, oh, well, I'll create a new offering. I'll do this or do that. I'll, put things out more, whatever. Nothing. It was really like the dark night of the soul is a spiritual experience to basically let go of all of our ego attachments, which can be everything from relationships, everything, your identity as your job or the place that you live or your physical health. I had all of these different issues all going on at one time. But ultimately, the underlying thing is to release those attachments and just trust and know that you are supported by source, which is, because we think like our ego thinks like I'm making this happen, when, and there's a piece of that, and there's something bigger and more beautiful beyond, but it's so hard to trust that, right? That's why we're trying to control everything while we're here. But once you have that, when I understood that I was supposed to be learning to surrender to source, but still you're like, I don't know how I'm going to pay my mortgage, today. It's hard to really anchor in that trust. But going through all of that, finally there was a place where I just finally embodied surrender, and slowly it shifted. And so these little ups and downs and things that happen now, I can always draw from, the reality of that experience and the knowing that I'll be okay. I've never been homeless, or even like starving or anything like that in this lifetime. I know I'm supported, even though I might not see where it's going to come from. And so it's great if you can get that awareness without suffering, and you can get that awareness through really challenging experience.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I've had plenty of trauma in my life. Just happened to be that around money, I've been able to learn without as much trauma. So yes, I completely agree with you. It is nice when we're able to learn our lessons willingly and easily, and it feels to me like we're headed in that direction. That the more that the planet grows in its spiritual growth and ascension process, raising the frequency, the less of these dark nights of the soul we'll experience, and the more we'll be able to learn our lessons peacefully and joyfully, and be able to move forward from that perspective. So I look forward to those days.
Yeah, I really resonate with that. That, a lot of our history, the main way to grow is through struggle.
Mhm.
And that now, as I believe that we're going through a planetary spiritual awakening, and so there's more and more opportunities to grow through choosing to grow with ease and grace and aligning ourselves with the higher path versus needing to be, like shoved into shaken awaken, kind of thing. So.
Yes. Unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to perceive it, it seems as though the world is going to have to hit a rock bottom and get smacked in the face pretty hard before we get to that place where we start going up and are able to learn our lessons more joyfully. But it seems as if we're headed towards that, at least the bottom point of that valley, much sooner than we realize, coming up soon.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's so important that we have these kind of conversations, because if more people open to these ideas, then it could mitigate some of that for them, right? And if we could, willfully choose to embrace that, then yeah, hopefully it doesn't have to be as intense. But either way, we can get there.
Agreed. Yes. which is why I started this podcast, was to help raise awareness to more people who are struggling
Mm-hmm.
and help them find some answers and some peace. So speaking of the podcast, question that I ask all of my guests is, what does the title of this podcast, Money to Meaning, actually mean to you, or how do you interpret the title?
Yeah, for me, so I think of, there's that expression, the end justifies the means, which for the most part, I do not resonate with at all. In most cases, I don't resonate. But I think that that's such a prevalent kind of underlying belief for a lot of people. And so, people get things backwards. And they think that the ends that they want is money, and they're willing to justify their own, like poor, the poor health or being miserable or their relationships failing, or even, maybe they're lying or cheating or doing horrible things just to try to get money and think that the end justifies the means, when I think money is just the means. And so the meaning is the most important thing, is that money is the means to help us to live our meaning. And so, it could almost be meaning to money to means would feel more complete. Like, I really think we have to first know, like I said, what our core values are. What is the meaning that money, can be the means for? There's a book called, I think it's called Creating Money by Sanaya Roman. And in that book, it's like a channeled book. She channels this higher being named Oren, but it's all about sort of, even the name Creating Money, it sounds like it's just about, finances, but really it's about uh, prosperity and abundance, which can be lots of different things, right? It could be health and love and so forth. But some of the exercises that she has you do really early on is kind of understand why you want the money, right? Like I said, just in my previous examples, for some people, money is security. For some people, money is freedom. Oh, now I can do whatever I want, or money is excitement and how, oh, I can finally, feel alive or whatnot. And we need to know what that is. And she has you like, if you know that money represents freedom, well, so freedom is really the end of what you want, not money. So how can you have a little more freedom right now? Oh, maybe take one afternoon off once a month and make yourself totally free. Or if security is what you really need, how can you create more security? Oh, maybe you start an extra savings or whatever. You start to slowly put away some in the piggy bank or whatever and give yourself security now, instead of like, if we are just focusing on money and we don't know what it means, then it's just never ending. And people will just find their whole life has gone by in a snap. And why? They don't even know why they suffered all of that for nothing. And so yeah, so for me, it's about utilizing money as a means for whatever your core values are, whatever will bring you the deepest fulfillment, and align yourself with that.
That's perfect. That's a beautiful answer. I completely agree with all of that, and I love what you shared about the exercises in the book. I haven't heard of that author. I need to go check her out, because that's very aligned with my approach to life in general, and just that what I've learned in my career and in my life in general is that when I stopped chasing money and I focused on meaning, on reward, and doing things that are helpful to others, that are meaningful, that I could feel it in my heart would be expanding, made me feel good, that the money just shows up. The money, and I'm not talking about millions and billions of dollars that I don't need, but everything that I need to live the life that I want has shown up at the time that I need it, if not in advance of that. Ever since I shifted that focus, it was really so powerful. And that's really what my hope is for everyone who watches the podcast, listens, to learn and to be able to start practicing that. When you get out of that fear mode that you were just talking about, fear of not having safety or not having food, not having enough of whatever, and focus on, just shift to focusing on doing good and doing meaningful things that you're provided for. It's like I think I posted this on Facebook a while back that I see money as the exchange of money as being an expression of gratitude. And my dad said, well, my dad, of course, it's interesting that it was my dad who responded to the post by saying, well, what about those who are billing us and we don't get to choose how much or who we're paying? And I said, we are choosing, even if it's not obvious that, if you're choosing to live in a home that has electricity, you're going to get an electric bill. Yes, they're going to determine the rates, but you've made the choice to live in that home, knowing that you can afford all of the things that go along with that home. And so paying the electric bill is an expression of gratitude that you have electricity, that you have lights when you're in the dark, and so when you can shift your focus to being in that mode of gratitude and of reward and meaning, then money just seems like a kind of an afterthought, and it's not a big deal anymore.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful perspective. And I think that it's that we often don't, when we're doing this exchange of money, we're not really like thinking of it as energy. But like you said, it's really energy that we put out. So every time if you're paying something, if there's gratitude and you're putting out gratitude, that's what you're attracting back. And so I think, the more, and as somebody who's like so spiritually oriented, a lot of times people, spiritually oriented people, have a struggle with, because there's this whole like, oh, money is evil, money is the root of all evil, this idea. And so like then we unconsciously keep ourselves from being abundant because there's this idea that money is not spiritual, when really it's all about what you're saying. It's about what energy do we utilize money for, what energy do we infuse in it. And if we put this beautiful gratitude energy into it, when we're sharing it, when we're paying our bills as sharing it, then it can come back to us in that same way.
Yeah, and it's not easy at all when you're writing a check and it's bringing your bank account balance down to zero. It's really hard sometimes, but it is so worth it to really just dig deep and find that gratitude. Like, hey, I have the money in my account to pay this bill, even though it's bringing me down to zero and I don't have lunch money for tomorrow. I'm thankful that I have the money to pay this bill today, and just try to make that a habit. And that will eventually, if not right away, it will shift the energy so that it's in your favor and you're able to get what you're wanting more of. So I love this. I'm so glad we got to have this conversation too. This was so powerful and beautiful. I always love my conversations with you, Tianna. So thank you so much
Likewise.
for being here. How can people find you if they want to engage you for Reiki or past life regression, or join a networking group that you're in? How can they find you?
Yeah, the best way would be to go to my website, awakeningtransformation.com, and then you'll see the links to all the different things that I offer.
Perfect. And then they can also watch you on your podcast called Beyond the Illusion.
Yes, which you are going to be a guest on my podcast soon, so you can people can come and actually it's just audio. And one day it might be video. I just have so many things going on that I'm like one day I'll get around to that. But certainly you can listen to Beyond the Illusion podcast, which we feature a lot of other spiritual practitioners and people with really beautiful, exciting ideas. About this spiritual awakening that we're talking about. And we do have some episodes that are on abundance and prosperity as well. And of course, people are going to want to listen to the episode where we interview you. And that's
Awesome.
beyondtheillusionpodcast.com.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you again so much, Tianna. It's been really wonderful chatting with you.
Likewise. Thanks so much for having me on.
Have a good one.
You too.